do really similar things right now because everything's crazy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Kids Are Talking with Dr. Don. I'm Michael, and today's show is going to be a good one. We're talking about modern identity and sexuality. I'm real excited for the show. Everybody out there in YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch world, if you're watching, we know you're watching, please comment on the video, and we'll try to bring your comments in. If you have something to say, we'd love to hear your thoughts, and we'll try to bring that into the panel. And obviously, like and subscribe to the show, and you can stay up to date on more shows. If you're a kid and you want to participate in the show, please, through social media or on our website, kidsaretalking.live, reach out to us. Let us know what you want to talk about. We want to hear from you. This show is about you, the kids. So please, please do that. And for all of our panelists, please, if you have any opinions and you disagree with anything Dr. Don says, please disagree. Please disagree with each other. We would love to have your opinions. Just be respectful of everybody's opinion, and we want to hear all your thoughts. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Don. Here he is.
Hey, Mike.
You ready for the show?
Wow. This is we've been talking about this one for a long time, and not a lot of people have done anything with it. We have some really brave people on the show. The show tonight is, as far as I know, it's not been done very often.
Well, it was done. It was done once in 2000. And actually, I have this tape here, and today I was digitizing this tape. And believe it or not, this is something that these kids wouldn't understand. The tape was recording, and it came out, and I opened up the recorder, and there was like magnetic tape hanging out. I pulled it out. I had to wind it back with the pencil, but I was able to salvage probably 98% of the recording. Tomorrow at 7, I'm going to be putting out the 2000 show talking about, I think it was called homosexuality in the schools.
Yeah, we actually did it a couple of times. And one of our guests tonight, who you're going to meet very soon, is Dan Woog, who was on that show, and he's come back. So this is a show about now and then. And although we're using the word modern, like everything else in life, has a lot of controversy and contradictions attached to it, because a lot of things that happened then and a lot of things that are happening now, I think, overlap. And that's one of the things we're going to learn tonight from these guests. I myself personally am here to learn a lot tonight. Like I think all of us, there's a lot of confusion with the language, a lot of confusion about what is really going on out there. And we want to get people feeling more comfortable. And the people here tonight are the real experts on this subject. So
I just wanted to say, when I was listening, I did listen to the tape, and it was from 20 years ago. There was issues back then. And on the show, Dan Woog was talking about his experience in high school in the 70s, which is, we don't want to even know how many years ago that was. And the issues persist. And I'd love to hopefully today find out why hasn't things changed? What has changed? What do we still need to work on? And I would love to have that as one of the outcomes of the show.
We know the language is modern, but we're not sure about everything behind the language is so modern, because there was an article that I'm going to talk about later in today's New York Times about transgender children are everywhere. And that's a whole other subject we're going to get into later on. I just want to comment before we meet Dan Woog. Mike, I love that pride flag. It's very colorful. It's like a rainbow. Thanks.
Yeah, so I got the pride flag. It's actually a painting. I got it off Unsplash, which is a great source for photographers to get their work out there. The artist was Steve Johnson. So thank you to Steve for providing us with that graphic for the show today. And thank you to Paradigm Financial Partners for sponsoring us. So we'll have a quick word from Paradigm, and then we'll bring the guests out.
We'll meet Dan and get going.
Okay.
Kids Are Talking is sponsored by Paradigm Financial Partners. Align your values and financial goals. Build your wealth and financial security for a rich and satisfying life with Paradigm Financial Partners.
Dan, welcome back. It's been over 20 years.
Hey, this seems like 2 decades.
It's unbelievable to me because I never thought we were going to be able to do this again. And here you are. And it's really a lot of things have happened since I saw you last. For you, I mean, you have 06880, which is read by everybody in Fairfield County and probably beyond that. You're an author of books. You're still coaching that soccer team at Staples High School.
Yep.
And I would consider you one of Westport's Renaissance men.
You know what? I love what I do, and I'm so happy to be able to do it as myself. Really important.
So appreciative to have you here tonight. And actually, one of the questions I want to ask you is, you were on the show over 20 years ago on Kids Are Talking. What do you feel is different? Here you are now, and there you were then. And where do you feel some of the changes where are we now compared to where we were then?
It's a great question. I look around and I see so many young people now who are out, they're open about their sexuality, they're open about their gay friends, they're open about being trans. And it's a massive change in 20 years. It's positive, it's great. They're much more supportive by their parents. And of course, I'm speaking in generalities. You know, there are plenty of kids out there I know listening who say, I could never be out. What hasn't changed, I think, is that there's still some of that fear. What's my life going to be like? Will I lose friends? Will I lose family members? Will I have a happy life? And I think part of that is being a young person and not knowing what's going to happen in the future. And part of it is because people still say, that's so gay, don't be a faggot. So that hasn't changed.
I'm glad you brought that up, because the word queer, when I was going to school in the 1960s, if you called somebody a queer, now you have queer lit, for instance, in the New York Times, there was a whole article about queer lit. Now it seems completely acceptable, but when we called people queer, it was not nice. It was bullying, and you were considered, particularly guy, if somebody called you queer, they thought you were too feminine, or you were gay.
It's sort of like the word dyke. I think the word black for a while was really pejorative. And if you can reclaim it, if you can say, yeah, I'm queer, yeah, I'm a dyke, then all of a sudden that word has no power over you anymore.
Yeah, when I saw the New York Times write a whole thing about queer lit, I thought that was really cool, because like all these people are writing now about, particularly the older people that have come out, are getting to hear nice new stories and using their imagination and getting to read literature that talks about what life could have been like for them now, because it's much more about it being more acceptable literature and creating scenarios that they didn't get to experience when they were younger. So cheers to queer lit.
There you go.
And one of the things I was going to ask you also is that how old were you when you came out?
Coming out is a process. People think it's, one and done, but it's not. First, you have to come out to yourself, and that's a process. Oh my God, I might be gay. Yeah, maybe I am gay. What does it mean for me? Okay, I'm gay. I'm ready to come out. And then telling that first person is really, really scary, particularly if it's a relative, a parent.
Who was your first person?
Good friend.
And how old were you?
Early 20s.
Wow.
And he said, it's great. Congratulations. I just know a little bit more about you. But then you have to come out, to other people. In my case, it was coming out to my soccer team and the parents of my athletes. And then, I came out to my newspaper readers. Teachers have to come out to their classes, or maybe just to their colleagues. And then you forget who you came out to. But even in some other situations, let's say you're in an elevator and somebody makes some remark, anti-gay remark. Do you say anything? You're never going to see these people again. But on the other hand, they're talking about you. So it is a process. It's not a one-time thing.
Well, you're going to meet some really brave guests tonight, and a chance for you to exchange ideas. I was thinking, when you heard we wanted you back on the show again, what made you feel it was important to come on tonight?
Because it's about the next generation. It's not about me, not about you. It's about the kids who are talking. And every time I'm around young people, I am energized, I'm empowered, I'm inspired, and I want to hear what they have to say.
You are a true gift. And thank you so much for coming on. We're honored to have you as well. And I want you to meet some of our other guests because they're pretty amazing. So there we are. Eunice, I guess we'll talk to you first. So glad to have you, Eunice.
Thank you for having me.
And I want you to know, like, my first question is for you is what made you feel it was important to come on the show tonight?
Yeah. I just thought it would be a great platform to educate people out there, and also personally it just makes me feel good about my identity, my sexuality, when I'm able to talk about it with other people, especially on a public channel like this one, and have it go out to YouTube. It's a big step for me as someone who just recently came out. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So this is your first time doing it. You're really going big, getting out here, and it's brave, right? It's
Yeah.
a little surreal for you to be doing this tonight, I would think.
Yes, it is. I'm just kind of trying to keep myself composed right now.
You're doing great.
Yeah,
you have a beautiful smile.
Thank you.
So what I want to ask you, and I'm going to ask all of you this, and I'll even swing back to Dan, although we know something about Dan, is that I wanted to ask if you would mind share what your sexual gender and identity is for everybody.
Yes. Wait, me first?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So
I'm going to ask that to everybody, but I figured this is a nice way to introduce you all. So you go first.
Okay. Yeah. So my name is Eunice. My pronouns are she, hers, and I'm pansexual.
Can you explain that? Believe me, this audience has no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I can a little bit.
We need to unconfuse the world and America.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted to start off by saying everyone's experience when it comes to sexuality is different. When I say I'm pansexual, that could mean something totally different to another person who also identifies as pansexual. So personally, I identify as pansexual, and that means to me, I'm attracted to any gender out there, and I don't limit my attractions or my relationships or my perception in relationships to the binary that we currently have. Yeah.
And you just said you came out recently. When did you come out?
To be honest, there is no specific timestamp that I could say when I came out because, like Dan said, it is a process, and I could say, oh, it was last year, but really it was a couple months ago. It's confusing. So I just say recent. So recent can span from a month ago to a year ago.
That's fine. And can you explain your pronoun? Can you say your pronoun again? I'm not sure everybody heard it.
Yes, my pronoun is she, hers.
Can you explain that also? The audience, believe me, the language is very complex for people that don't understand this. So
yeah. So like I said again, I don't know everything, but to me,
neither do I.
Pronouns are important to me because it is part of my identity. I have claimed she, hers, and I want people to use she, hers when they talk about me or when they pertain to me. And when someone else says that they identify as she, hers, but gets misgendered, that's when it becomes really important that we share pronouns and that we educate people about using pronouns properly.
So is the use of the pronoun for you a way of you embracing your identity? So
yes, and it's a way for people who are not part of the LGBT community to also respect that person and to respect their identity. Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. And we'll get into later on, I'm sure, some of what it's been like for you to come out and deal with so many things around that. So we're going to swing back to you after we meet our other guests. But again, welcome. Chris. Okay, my friend, you've been here before. You represent yourself tonight in terms of sharing your own sexual and gender identity. It would be helpful for people to know who you are and what's important to you.
Chris, you're muted.
Oh, he's muted.
You're so right. I
Oh.
am muted. I
Oh my
forgot.
God! Can we hear you? Can we hear Chris now?
Now we can hear you.
Chris, you muted yourself. All I want to do is ask you one question. I can't hear you.
I'm unmuted now, right? You guys can hear me?
No, you're right there, buddy.
Okay, great.
Can we hear Chris now, everybody? All right.
Great.
Good.
Right.
Good.
So my name is Chris. For you guys who don't know me, I'm a cisgender male. I use he/him pronouns, and I am heterosexual. What else were we including in our little introductions, Don? What can I talk about?
Well, so what does that pronoun mean for you?
He/him are my pronouns when someone refers to me. If they say I was going to the park, they could say he is going to the park. I mean, everybody has pronouns. It's not really pertinent to a specific sexuality or a specific community.
Well,
it's just kind of an English language thing.
So I'm going to cheat a little bit because you and I have had some side conversations. Okay. But everybody else doesn't know about our side conversations. You have a lovely girlfriend. You have a really wonderful relationship with her. But we've talked about binary, non-binary, right? And sometimes am I right? You refer to yourself as non-binary sometimes?
Yeah, I think it's more non-conforming, but non-binary.
Can you explain what you mean to people again to help us understand what you mean by that, not conforming?
Yeah, we have a lot of conformity in how our society respects gender and sexuality and identity. So it's very rigid, and it definitely has loosened over time, but there's still a lot of systemic boxes that people are forced into. So being non-binary and non-conforming really means that you just try to step outside that box.
And what does that mean for you to step outside the box?
You can refer to me with any pronouns. I usually get referred to with he/him pronouns, but any pronouns work. When I live my life, I try not to do many things that are gendered because although it doesn't affect me heavily because I have been fortunate enough to be comfortable in the body I was born with. I'm cisgendered. I know it can help out people who don't feel comfortable in their body because those rigid boxes are really damaging to someone who doesn't feel like they fit in them.
Yeah, I think we talked about even the way you dress. You're like, you don't care if you dress in a free flowing way, and you're not thinking about, well, that's too masculine or too feminine, right?
Right. Yeah. Clothes don't have gender. So if you kind of can embrace that mindset, you know, you can maybe help someone else down the road.
Dan is smiling. Dan, what? Oh, Dan, now you're muted. Are you there?
That's the difference of 20 years.
Okay.
Chris 20 years ago, he couldn't express that so articulately and beautifully. And even if he felt it, he might not even be able to reach it. So that's the difference of 20 years. And that Chris is the future of this country.
Yeah, that's Chris. I think that's true about you. That's why you are the now and then guy, but more now guy, not the then guy, actually. Right, Dan? Yeah. So thanks for coming back, Chris. You're becoming a household name.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to go over to Niles. Niles, welcome. Where is Niles? Oh, there he is. Sometimes I got to get used to this screen myself. I'm looking at you, and then all of a sudden you're here. Welcome, Niles. You are a very brave man to come on the show tonight. And
thank you.
I really welcome you. And what made it important for you to come on the show tonight?
Well, I was offered the chance. I think my mother told me about it, and I was excited to, be able to educate people about being trans, I suppose.
You're all over the news. I mean, there are so many articles about transgender. It is like unbelievable, which we're going to get to later on in the show. So in terms of your gender and sexual identity, how would you define? Well, we know you're transgender, but would you do anything else to define you other than that?
Well, I'm a trans man, and I was born a woman. And my pronouns are he, him. Well, actually, if people ask, I say I'm a transitioned trans man because that is how I identify as someone who has gone through the transition process already. And my sexuality is pansexual. I'm also polyamorous, which is not a sexuality, but it is something that is often tied to the queer, like spectrum.
Could you tell us what polyamorous is for all the people out there that are confused and uneducated about this language?
Yes, so poly means many, and amorous means love, and that is exactly what it means. It means that you can love multiple people and that you have multiple romantic relationships. Well, it depends on the person, but generally, polyamorous people will have will either be open to multiple relationships or will have them.
Eunice, you look like you look like you were responding to him and what he was saying. Did you have a response to meeting Niles right now and what he's saying? What?
I was muted. Sorry. No, I just got excited because he said he was pansexual, and I'm also pansexual. So I was like, ah.
Oh, that got you excited.
Yeah.
How come? How come that got you so excited? I sensed something was going on in that body of yours. What was it that was getting you excited about that?
I just feel like finding other people part of the community, especially your community, is just really important and really exciting. It creates like this bond, I guess. And yeah, seeing how a lot of our world is straight, it's exciting when other people are not that, and just that they're also they can relate to you. So yeah.
So where do you see this? I'm going to show you all something. Mike didn't get to post this. This was today's New York Times. Can you all see this? Transgender children are everywhere. It's interesting. Some people think that this is just a fad. There are people watching this show. This article brought that out, that this is not just postmodern, like Seattle, San Francisco kind of thing. This has been going on since the early 20th century, which is what is written about in this article. And clearly, there's a whole community of people that have been struggling with all the judgments, and I think they're like over, Dan, am I right, over 70 bills that are in legislation now over gay rights?
I'm
I'm
sure there are.
At least 70 bills. But this article was very interesting to me because, as you were just saying, Eunice, it's like, it's really not a fad. And there are people all over the world that have found each other, like you're finding each other tonight, and hopefully other people are finding you tonight, that have been really isolated and thought, God, well, there are other people like me. Well, it's been going on all over the world since the early 20th century. So this is not really a fad, right? And that's pretty amazing. And Niles, for you, how has it been transitioning? Has it been tough with your family and friends? Has that been difficult?
Well, I mean, to be honest, when I came out at first, it wasn't really taken well. I was sort of abused for some years. But then, like, I remember that I went into my mom's room and I was like crying, and I said I wanted to start testosterone, and she said, okay. And then, yeah, so basically I started transitioning from that point on. And
how old were you?
I think like 16 or maybe 17.
When did you know that this is who you were?
Well, honestly, it came around because I would go online on social media and I would pretend to be a guy, basically. And I guess I really identified with that and I really liked it. So, and then I started feeling uncomfortable when I went back into the real world and people would call me a woman.
Wow. How about you have a brother, right? How was that with a brother who was going through that with you? How did he respond to it?
My brother was very accepting. He didn't really interact with it much in the beginning when it was a struggle. But yeah, now he is very supportive, and he fights for the trans community.
That's really nice. I meant to ask you, Eunice, like, when did you know? When did you get in touch with your own identity around this? How old were you?
I started admitting it to myself around senior year of high school, and then which is my last year of high school, when I got to my first semester of college, I was much more independent. I was meeting more people who were part of the LGBTQ community. And that's when, like before, when I was exploring, I had started to admit it to myself, but I was still in denial because I was surrounded with that energy. Everyone around me was saying, no, you can't be that. And so I tried to convince myself that I wasn't that. And then when it got to my first semester of college, um, I was able to cut all those people off because, well, I was on my own. So I was able to cut those people off, and I was able to focus a lot on myself, what I wanted, my identity, and not trying to change my identity just so that other people are comfortable with it. Um, yeah. So
We have a good question from
Oh.
the chat room.
We got a chat room question for you all. Okay.
Yeah, I'll put it up on the screen.
Okay.
What
suggestions would you give on how people can be an advocate for the transgender community?
That must be for Niles. But
Okay, well, Niles, Niles, we'll give it to you, but it really is for all of you because we're all in this together. But go ahead, Eunice, or we're talking to you. Go first, Eunice. Actually, you were the one talking. You want to try to respond to that question?
yeah, of course. What suggestions would you give on how people can be?
What suggestions would you give on how people can be an advocate for the transgender community?
Yeah. Well, first of all, just listen. Keep your mouth shut. That is literally the first step, the simplest. Just listen to trans people and what they have to say. You honestly don't have to say anything. Yeah.
And let's go around the room on this one. Niles.
Honestly, I would say creating trans-friendly spaces is very important. Like where I live in North Georgia, we don't have any trans-friendly spaces, except for online. So when I was in Connecticut, I could go to a lot of different places like the Triangle Community Center and places within Staples High School as well. And I felt like I belonged there. Here, I don't have anywhere to go except for online.
Yeah.
And other people that I personally know, but there's no like community center that I can go to, which I think is sad.
Maybe after the show, we can convince some people where you are to do that, huh? Right? For all of you who are listening in Nilestown, let's give that to you, right? Are you frozen, Niles?
No, that's all I have to say.
Okay. Dan, how about you?
I think call people out. So many people say things like, "Oh, I don't understand why these trans people are," they'll make remarks, and call them out on it. Why do you say that? Do you know any trans people? You probably do, and don't even know that they're trans. Why are you threatened? Why do you have to make comments about other people? Stand up. I mean, there's nothing more important than allies, than being a straight ally for LGBTQ, being a gay ally for trans, being a male ally for women, whatever it is, allyship is really important.
So what do you think gets in the way for people with that? I mean, how come people have to do that, and
Fear.
And what is their fear, do you think? And that's
the fear is, why do you care? Are you a fag? Why do you care about those people? Or fear of saying the wrong thing or whatever it is, but it's a fear about you rather than thinking about the other person and that person's life. And you can't live your life fearful any more than you can live your life in a closet.
Good point. And Chris, you seem to want to say something about that.
Yeah, it's a great point. We talked about this a couple episodes ago about fat phobia, because we were wondering why it's considered a phobia, and a lot of these things, they exactly are that. It's a fear. There's an internalized fear, and that's why homophobia is a phobia. It's a fear. Just as Dan said, a lot of people are afraid of whatever internalized perceptions they have about being gay or being trans. So just like Dan said, you can't live in fear, and you got to kind of come to terms with that.
What suggestions would you give on how people can be advocates for the transgender community?
I can say you really need to be an ally. You need to be a good listener. Listen to those around you, and really just be kind and respectful.
That came up in the body image show too, didn't it? Being kind. Yeah. We're all human, right? Yeah, that's why the whole Juneteenth thing came up, and now we have Pride Month. So we've definitely progressed, Dan, from over 20 years ago. I mean,
it's huge.
We're celebrating this month. We celebrate Juneteenth for Black Rights Matter, and here we are talking about this tonight. So that leads me into another thing. You all know about what happened with the football player in the NFL who came out. Did you all hear about that? No, that's the wrong thing Mike put. But that's later, Mike. There he is. Carl Nassib announces he's gay, an NFL first. Apparently, there's been a lot of really good discussion and positive feelings about that. Do you feel it's going to make a difference for a guy from the NFL? Because that's some macho sport, football, right? I mean, it's so macho and masculine. So a guy coming out in the NFL, do you think that that's going to have an impact?
It breaks down some of those walls. Football is a very binary masculine sport. Yeah. So it will help break that down and change that narrative.
And what do you think, Niles?
I think it's good that like, how do I put it, like that gay people have someone to look up to now. Well, I mean, I guess they have before, but I mean, you know, like someone who wants to play football but is gay and might feel uncomfortable about that can see that this football player is also gay.
So we think this is a very good thing.
I mean, representation, I guess, is what I mean.
What's that, Niles? I'm sorry. What was that?
I mean, representation is what I'm talking about.
Representation, yes.
Yeah, that's a really good point, too, because as we're talking about how far we've progressed in just 20 years, there isn't a lot of representation because people weren't coming out with the same frequency as they are today 20 years ago. So representation is a really important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Chris is exactly right. And, you know, it's one thing for, you know, let's say a dancer, an interior decorator to be gay. And people can say, well, that's what gay is. But then when you've got a gay NFL player, a gay police officer, a gay politician, a gay priest or rabbi, all of a sudden people look around and they go, wait, that person's gay, and that person, and that person, and that person. So you know, the more people that come out, the more important it is. And I'll tell you one thing, nobody is going to tell Carl Nassib to his face anything homophobic because he's 6'7" and weighs 275 pounds. So he would kick your ass.
Don't mess with him. And Eunice, how about you? What do you think about this NFL guy coming out?
Yeah, I agree that representation is really important, and he really stood up. And I don't know if he's the first. Is he the first?
Yeah, he was the first active NFL player to come out.
Yeah, being the first one, that's really big. But also, it's just, you know, it's a bit sad that there's a whole article about having to discuss someone's sexuality.
It's so not just tons of articles, like every paper.
Not only are there going to be articles, but then people are going to respond and be like, he's an NFL player and he's gay, kick him out. And then there's going to be a whole debate, a whole discussion. And I guess it is good to, like, that he was able, or that him coming out is able to kind of kickstart this discussion. But should there be a discussion in the first place? I don't know. So yeah.
Now it even gets worse. Do you hear what happened in Philadelphia with the Supreme Court? Religion versus human rights. How foster gay people can't be, they can't adopt from the foster family. You can't have a foster family. Did you all know about this particular Supreme? It just happened in the past week. Is that a setback for us? Here we have this. That's what's so nuts, right? You have the thing about the football player, and then you have the thing that's going on in Philadelphia. Yeah. It gets it's troubling. Because we've still got a long way to go. Chris?
I think a lot of times it feels that our politics and lawmaking system is generations behind how we actually feel. We have like an average age of like 63 or something like that in the Supreme Court. And I think it's very apparent they're out of touch with the younger generation and the majority of the population, how they feel.
And religion seems to get in the way a lot, right, Dan? What do you think of this decision? What do you think of this decision in Philadelphia?
Yeah, the number of religions that focus on sexuality is bizarre. There's so much about religion that's so great, and the ways to lead your life and the goodness in people's hearts, and when you have some religions just focusing on something that you can't even find in the Bible, or that is stuck in there with other prohibitions like eating shellfish or touching the skin of a dead pig, which is exactly what a football is. It's
true, actually.
it boggles the mind.
Of all things, the football, right? After this guy just comes down. Niles, what do you think about the decision in Philadelphia?
I think it's sad that the Supreme Court is siding with this Catholic adoption agency. I feel like we should be spreading the message that it is not, but it should not be like a religious exception, like being discriminatory.
It's interesting because, in America, there's a history of separation of church and state. Right. But what about the separation of sexuality and state? Well, how can the state come and interfere with a person's sexuality?
That's a good point, Mike. So these things are troubling, obviously. And now I'm going to bring up another troubling thing that came up in the news because I've been overloaded with it. The Olympiad for the Tokyo Olympics. Did you all hear about the weightlifter from New Zealand? Now, Niles, this is a good one for you, I think, because she trans into being a man, but is going to be competing in the Olympics against women. And then there's a whole argument now about women equality. Like, there's a woman who decides to become a man get to compete. Is it fair for them to compete against other women in the Olympics? And they're basing it on a certain level of testosterone, by the way.
I'm kind of confused. Is he a trans man?
Yeah, he's trans. He's become a man.
Oh, okay.
Came from a woman to a man. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Trans to a man. Yes, a trans man.
Then he, I think it's nice because with testosterone, you actually start to build muscle as easily as men can. What happens when you take testosterone is that it doesn't replace, but it stops estrogen. It just stops it. And you basically have normal levels of testosterone that a man would. So I think that he should be able to do it, to compete against other men.
No, he's actually going to be competing against other women in the Olympics.
Oh, he's competing against other women?
Yes. Am I correct, Dan? That's my understanding.
Yeah, I believe the International Olympic Committee rule is that you have to compete at the gender you were assigned at birth.
Oh, okay.
I think that's the international rule.
Yeah, that's the controversy, Niles. And then, of course, women are feeling that's not, where's the women's equality in that?
I would say that because of the testosterone that he's taking, he's basically, a man. So he should actually be put into the men's group instead of the women's group.
So you actually don't think that he should be competing in the Olympics with women, against women?
No, because the testosterone in his body is given the woman.
And Eunice, what do you think on that one?
Yeah. Is the athlete is being forced to compete with other women?
That's really what she's. What'd you say, Niles?
He's being forced because he was born a woman.
Well, Mike, go ahead, Mike.
She transitioned from male to female. I believe that's what it said.
Oh, did she go? I thought it was. Did she become? No, I don't know. Do you know? I thought she transitioned to to being
I
a man.
feel like this is a good add-on to suggestions on being an advocate for trans people, is to really know your terms and your so knowing like terms male to female and female to male. And
Well, no, my understanding is that you put the article up there that she was a woman. Is that the right way to say? And trans and is now a man.
You would say he was a woman.
yeah.
Yeah, that's where it gets tricky. Well, yeah. So how would you say it? What would be the right way to say it?
Well, his pronouns. I'm assuming his pronouns, but I would
her
assume
pronouns are she.
Her pronoun-
She became the first transgender woman to qualify for the Olympics.
Oh,
so. She's male to female.
she's a trans woman.
Oh, so she's a trans woman. See, this is why I have you on the show, because does that make it?
This also comes back to why pronouns.
Yeah,
are
the
important.
pronouns are important. So does that clear up? Does that change the discussion at all, or?
And why would it change the discussion?
And why would it change the discussion?
We can just now correctly gender her.
Okay.
Yes,
But-
her name is Laura Hubbard. She's a trans woman, and she's competing against other women.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess we'll leave that, right?
Yeah. So the discussion was whether she should be able to, right? Or that's
Yeah,
the
that she should be able to.
controversial opinion.
Right.
Yes, she's a woman, so she should be able to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also wanted to add on that people could easily educate themselves about why this is. A lot of people, when they talk about trans people, they go back to the science behind it and like the biology behind it, especially when it comes to trans people competing in sports. But it's really easy to educate yourself. We have Google. People just want to be transphobic, and they just want to prevent trans people from being able to really do things that normal people do, such as being an athlete. So honestly, scientifically, if people really want to look at that, it makes sense for her to compete with other women.
Well,
And
that's what we have to
I would add that the issue is far less about the infinitesimal number of people who are Olympic athletes and the many more boys and girls or kids who just want to play sports. 8 years old, 10 years old, 14 years old. They're not going to be Olympic athletes. They just want to run or jump or throw or play hockey or soccer, whatever it is, and have fun. And there should be no barriers to that. You compete against the gender that you feel most comfortable with, and you can't worry about that.
So then, okay, yes.
Just to add in here, the National Review has said that the issue is that the weightlifter was born and competed as a man, and that gives her now clear advantages over women because she had that previous experience.
But she's taking estrogen, so.
Yeah.
Also, any Olympic weightlifter has weightlifting experience.
So I think what it comes down to is the Tokyo Olympics have made a good decision by allowing her to compete.
Yeah, you should compete with your gender.
Yeah, it does get confusing, but I think that the point has been well made that she has a right to compete with women, and that is who she is. And so I have one that's an interesting question for you. I in terms of I was talking to a filmmaker, and he was talking to me about there was a controversy over there was some movie or about a transgender experience, and a straight person was playing the role, and he got a lot of criticism because they felt the transgender person should be the only person that should play a role in a movie about a transgender. Would you agree with that, Niles?
I mean, I personally don't care that much, but I mean, I do think that a trans person should have played that role. It would have been a much better decision in like just a piece, I don't know how to put it, like to make the public more happy, I guess. And I think it would be it would connect more to who the actor is. I do think at the same time that actors will play wildly different people than they are and stuff like that. So honestly, I'm kind of in the middle. I feel like it would be best if they hired a trans actor, but I'm also not angry that they had someone else do it.
I think it goes back to representation.
Mhm.
Straight people have dominated almost every field, but also acting. I think you'll be better represented if you're playing a trans person to have a trans actor. I mean, you don't. In the Jackie Robinson movie, it wasn't a white guy playing Jackie Robinson.
Dan, you're laughing?
For obvious reasons, but it's the
Yeah.
same thing.
I think there was also an issue with there was a movie where there was the main character was in a wheelchair, and they said, well, why wouldn't we hire someone that's actually handicapped, because they really couldn't play any other role anyway.
Right.
But that's
Right.
kind of
Yeah, it's representation.
And Eunice, you feel the same way, I assume, or not?
Yeah.
So I'm going to make something a little more complicated. I'm going to take a risk here. I brought this up, Dan, on our show many, many years ago. There was Carl Jung, the very famous Swiss psychiatrist. Are you all familiar with him? And there was the concept of androgyny that was very popular in the 1960s. And Jung's concept of bisexuality was that everybody's psychologically bisexual. And then in every man, there's an inner woman, which he called the anima. And in every woman, there's a masculine side that's the animus. And in the 60s and early 70s, androgyny was a very popular concept in terms of psychological bisexuality. And I'm just curious to know now, because that was a long time ago and Carl Jung is not here anymore, thoughts on that particular position. Chris?
I'll leave that one out. I think that's taking just human nature and human beings, something inherently non-binary, and giving it a binary. There's no feminine traits. There's no masculine traits. People are just who they are, and they exhibit the traits they want to. And I think that's just labeling something that is inherently doesn't need to be labeled, or doesn't need to be confined to something. There's not a masculine side of everybody and a
So you don't believe in, you don't.
everybody.
Jung talked about it as energy, by the way, psychic energy. He wasn't talking about it as gender when he was writing about that. And Dan, remember those days? People were talking about that, and androgyny and psychological bisexuality. But what do you think, Dan, about that?
I think Chris is entirely right. I mean, sexuality, every part of humanity is a spectrum. And, there's no one side or the other side. You don't feel the same way today that you did yesterday, or that you'll feel tomorrow. And if you get hung up on trying to label, as Chris said, or trying to figure stuff out or call yourself something, that's a lot of wasted energy that you could be devoting to something much more important.
And Eunice, what do you think?
I got kind of lost a bit. Can you repeat what the study was?
Well, about Carl Jung?
Yeah.
He said that in every woman, there's an inner man, and in every man, there's an inner woman, and in every woman, there's an inner man. And he believed in psychological bisexuality that wasn't gender specific. And there's a whole theory based on that philosophy.
Oh, okay.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, I don't know how true that is. I could understand that there's masculinity and femininity within all of us, but there is not necessarily a man and a woman in all of us. I think it's easy to get the two confused, but masculinity and femininity is very different from like man and woman.
We had one more question actually from the chat room. If you want to.
Yeah, we'll take it. Let's take the question from the chat room. Although before we do, Niles, do you want to respond to that before we take the question from the chat room? Do you want to say anything about this subject?
Oh, sure. I would say I think the terms that he picked were kind of strange. I think if he worded it in a different way and presented it differently, it would make more sense. And
how could he have presented it differently?
Well, maybe if he just talked about how people have, how people have different energies, and that it's, they might have some masculine energy and some more
Yes.
feminine energy, and then they might have some energy that's not really feminine or masculine.
Well,
And
yeah, he was talking
yes,
about his energy, but he was defining it as, in every woman there's an inner man, and in every man there's an inner woman.
yes,
he
I
was
don't think
somebody.
that was a good way to define it
Yes,
or
I
explain
agree. Yeah.
Well, too, he's a pretty well-known guy, so he's not here to defend himself. But I just thought I would bring that one up. Where's the question from the chat room? I have found that older generations confuse gender and sexuality. Any thoughts?
Boo.
What's
I
that?
can
I would say, oh, can I answer that?
Go
Sure,
for it, totally.
of course,
I would
please.
say that they weren't encouraged to talk about gender and sexuality in the past, so they're confused about it, basically.
Yeah. Is that a unanimous panel agreement, Eunice?
Yes, I agree. Although it gets very tiring to have to continuously repeat yourself, educate every older person out there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Also,
especially when it's family.
Yeah, like Uni said, you can figure out the difference between gender and sexuality in like 3 seconds on Google.
Yeah.
It'll give a nice, concise definition of the two.
People just need to be more patient and open and not get stuck in all this stuff, right? Just
Having an open mind is important.
having an open mind. So do you all feel, Eunice, you just said you recently came out, right?
Yes.
And does it feel comfortable? You feel that your family and your friends are very supportive?
To an extent, when it comes to family, it's a bit confusing. It goes deeper than if they just support me or not. But with friends, yes, they completely support it.
So when you say it goes deeper, can you tell us what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think it just has to do with the fact that they have a really hard time understanding because everyone in my family, at least my direct family, is cis hetero. So their knowledge when it comes to queerness and the community is very limited. And I have to be very understanding of that, and I have to be very patient with that. Compared to if it was just any other person who I was trying to be friends with, I would just be like, I don't really want to waste my time with you, and I don't really want to waste my time educating you, so I'm not going to deal with that. So, yeah, it's very different with my family, but we try.
And Niles, how about you?
Well, I want to say that I did mention that my family was abusive when I came out at first, and I wanted to clarify that that they've come around completely and that they are some of the most supportive people you'll meet. And I love them a lot. I also, so we are talking about the transitioning experience, right?
Yes.
Are we talking about like in the past or like recently?
Well, I would say we could talk about both. How about going through it and now recently? Maybe both for you. Obviously, different experiences or not?
Well, I mean, when I was transitioning at first, I had trouble with people calling me a woman, because I still kind of looked like a woman, and it took a while for people to start recognizing me as male. I actually remember the first time that someone called me using they them pronouns because they couldn't figure it out. That made me happy. Yeah, so basically nowadays I'm recognized as male by everyone, but that kind of brings its own set of, how do I put it? Not issues, but just like I basically go stealth all the time. And what that means is that you kind of just pretend that you're a cis man to
Really?
everybody because you're not visibly trans, so people can't really see that and you don't really tell them. And because of also where I live, I would feel uncomfortable telling them.
Is that a challenge for you? That seems challenging, is it?
A challenge? You mean telling them?
Telling him or not telling him, actually. Just.
Yes, I don't like not telling them because it makes it feel like I'm not being who I am to them.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, the people I do tell are usually like my friends. So it's, I guess I'm like people that are important to me know who I am.
That seemed to be hearing that a lot, Dan. Aren't we hearing that a lot tonight? That
Yeah, I mean, this is a very honest generation, and their friends get it, and they get it.
yeah.
And can't ask for more than that.
And for those who don't get it, what do we want to say to them?
Get over it.
Get over it. Yeah. And Eunice, what would you say?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say the same thing.
Get over it.
Yeah.
And Chris, is that what you would say too? Get over it?
Yeah, just move on. Like, stop wasting your time with that.
It's also none of their business.
What's
Yeah,
that, Eunice?
Seriously.
It's none of their business.
It's none of their business.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You got 2 minutes now.
We got 2 minutes to go. So I was thinking, like, God, I could go on. I have another 2 pages. But is there anything, we have 2 minutes to go. Is there anything any of you want to say or add to this conversation tonight? Or just kind of what you want people to learn from tonight? What are their takeaways? What's the takeaway tonight, Dan?
Kids are talking. You're not going to shut them up. Follow their lead.
That sounds like a good message. And Eunice?
Oh. Can we get back to me?
What's the take home? What's the message you would give to people that are watching the show tonight?
Yeah. Just educate yourself. I know it's very easy to go to the nearest gay person next to you and ask them the questions, but it's also very important that you go out of your way to educate yourself. And by watching the show and watching other things and reading things like this show, you are doing your job with that.
Thank you. And Niles, how about you?
I would say that the takeaway that I would like to give is that gender and sexuality are much more intricate and complicated than a simple label. And like I'm referring more to gender, I suppose. Like someone might choose the label non-binary, but that means something slightly different than someone who also chooses the label non-binary. It's basically what I mean. So I think it's important to not take the label, then look it up in the dictionary and think that every single person is that dictionary, that definition.
Well said. Well said. And Chris?
I think being respectful is really important. Having an open mind, and also being able to unlearn things and know that it takes unlearning to accept new information. Because the things that were taught 20 years ago are not what's taught today, and it's not what's going to be taught in 20 years. So when you learn something, it's not always the case. You might have new information that comes down the road, and you got to be ready to unlearn what you thought was true.
Dan, is this conversation different than the one we had over 20 years ago?
I can't remember a conversation I had 2 days ago. So
Yeah, I don't either. I just know that one of the things that I would take, well, 2 things I would say from tonight. The Tokyo Olympics know what they're doing. And also that people should just get to know who you are. I mean, who you are is who you are. And we are who we are. And we should just accept people and love them for who we are and embrace our identities. And you're so brave to be living your lives true to who you are and confident about how you feel about things. And this was a very hard show because it's so complicated. But I really want to thank all of you for coming on. And I might want to do this again next week. And if any of you are interested in coming back next week, I would probably like to do one more show on this. So next week, we're probably going to do another show on this. And again, I want to thank everybody for watching and listening and realize that this is something we need to respect humanity and let people be who they are. Not judge, try to understand and listen. Listen and basically respect. So from all of us, our kids are talking, I want to say goodnight to all of you. Mike and I are going to stick around just for a minute, and you're all very brave.
That was a show.
Wow. Was that a show?
Yeah. I mean, I think, listening to the previous show earlier today from, like I said, from 20 years ago, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of things that haven't been resolved that need to be resolved. And I think Chris hit it right on the head when he said, really be respectful. Eunice, I think she really nailed it when she said, do your research, find out. I mean, you don't just go investing without doing investment research. So why would you go into a relationship without really researching what is out there?
It's exhausting and overwhelming and so much to learn. And the language is so confusing, but it's clear that our guests are very strong in their positions about where they stand on this subject. I just wanted to stay out of trouble. I don't know. It was, it's easy to get in trouble on this subject.
It is, but I think if you're respectful and you're open-minded, I think you have the opportunity to learn a lot and not get into trouble, but just expand yourself, expand your horizons, expand your mind, and really learn something.
I was
keep growing. I always try to keep growing.
I always keep growing and learning. I was really impressed with how strong they felt about their positions. I just want to quote the Kinks. The first transgender rock song was in 1970. She talked like a woman and walked like a man.
Well, there you
the
go.
Song Lola, 1970. A friend of mine texted me late last night and said, you got to quote the Kinks. So that's what I'm going to do. And thank you for listening. Next week, we're going to try to bring some of these people back, and I have somebody from California who wants to come in and join in with us. So from all of us, our kids are talking. Good night. See you next week.
See you next week. Thanks so much for watching.
Thanks. Bye.